What's going on, everybody? This is an episode from the No Gimmicks Needed Wrestling podcast. Do you like podcasts and you want to see the full podcast? Make sure you check out the No Gimmicks Needed Wrestling podcast on all your podcast platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, among many others. But you're listening to the episode right here on YouTube, so make sure you hit that like button and below, and make sure you hit the subscribe button to NC Studios and NC Level Up for all your gaming needs. This is the Nerd Coalition. Enjoy the show. One of the things that I came across during WrestleMania weekend was they had a new documentary coming out on Peacock, not Netflix, on Peacock, called WrestleMania 9 Becoming a Spectacle. And I love documentaries, so I was very curious about it. And I think I asked the fellas about it, but a lot like, Q-Flow and all of them, they not, other than me in primetime, are not really into documentaries like that. So I love a good documentary. I love a good wrestling documentary, especially on a type of event or topic or things like that. And when I was watching, I was like, I'm gonna go check this thing out, right? Now, WrestleMania, it burnt me out because I did both the live streams for WrestleMania. I did NXT Stay Delivered. So I was like, when am I going to have time to watch it? So actually, I checked it out after both nights of WrestleMania. I was like, well, we're going to check this thing out. And it's a documentary about WrestleMania 9. Now, WrestleMania 9 took place in Caesar's Palace in Vegas. And this is the reason why they did this documentary, because we had another Vegas WrestleMania. And this time I was not watching WWE. I was like, you heard me say this like a broken record countless times, that I was a WCW guy, and so I was not watching WWE. I didn't hate WWE. Well, I can't say that, but to me, WWE was coming off very corny. I didn't like the gimmicks, but once again, it's like the same shit was happening in WCW. It's just WCW caught on a little bit quicker with the realism than WWE did. But at this time, I always knew about WrestleMania. Okay, I always knew about WrestleMania, and hell, even at the time I was watching more WCW, I knew more about WrestleMania than I did Starrcade, because Starrcade was WCW's thing. But I didn't get into the histories of WrestleMania until I got a little bit older and started watching WWE. So I went back and I remember watching WrestleMania 9. And I remember saying to myself, WrestleMania 9 is the god-awful worst WrestleMania of all time, right? And after watching this documentary, I actually respect it a little bit more, because there are other WrestleManias out there that I hate more, believe it or not. Because once again, it was just like, how the ending went and how the match quality was, but also it takes a lot of everything to come together to really, talk about a show like this, right? And so they was in the WWE archives, not the archives. See, I'm thinking of 2K. They was at the WHQ in Stamford, Connecticut. And then they go to the media storage room, and then they have over 500,000 hours of footage. And it's like, listen, all the stuff, I like going back and watching old school stuff. So they had, now I'm not talking about 500,000 hours of WrestleMania 9 footage. That's impossible. I'm talking about just in general, right? So they have 30 tapes that remain inside a vault for 3 decades. And in 19, first of all, I was like, man, is somebody coming to check on them, keep them in good condition? Because I got some VHSs, and I'm still wondering, like, do they still work? Because I still got like that combo VCR DVD player, and I'm like, I wonder if they still work or not. But still, they were going in there, and they decided since this was going to be a different kind of event, because this was like their first outdoor WrestleMania. It was something different, and it was in the parking lot of Caesar's Palace. Like, this is an actual parking lot that they turned into this arena that had this outdoor arena that fit about 16,000 people at this time, right? And once again, 16,000 people back then is a lot, because WrestleMania now, you talk about 70, 80,000 people every single Mania. Like, for 60, 70, 80,000, and sometimes it down like 100,000 people. You got a lot of fucking people when you deal with Mania today. These are big spectacles, but back then, and most of the time they was in the arenas. It was arena shows. I remember when WrestleMania came in Philly for the first time in the First Union Center, it was called, not the Wells Fargo Center, and that was only about 15,000 people at that. Because they used to do WrestleMania in the arenas, and then they started going to stadiums. Well, this was like a makeshift kind of a stadium in the parking lot, right? So they talked to a lot of the new it's the new generation era, and new generation era is kind of one of my favorites in WWE. Even though I didn't like the time period of time, but going back, I appreciate it because you got this is Undertaker, Razor Ramon, Diesel, Shawn Michaels, Doink the Clown, Bam Bam Bigelow, Yokozuna. Those guys right there, Lex Luger. Those guys are the ones I was like, I like something about this new generation era. I like, right? And one thing that this documentary had that I liked was it had like a Last Dance, that Jordan Last Dance feel. What I mean by that is they had like on a tablet, they were going back and showing all this footage to the guys that was there, like Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, stuff like that, because they never seen this before. Lex Luger, they were showing them all this footage that they, because they went around with camera guys, and at this time they were very protective of the business. So when they were backstage, just seeing Yokozuna in his regular clothes and Bret Hart and The Undertaker, who it showed him looking at the camera like, why are there cameras back here? What the hell's going on? Because he was very protective of the camera. He was looking mad uncomfortable, right? And Undertaker was like, look, backstage was my safe zone because I could just be myself, And when I had to get into character, I was very protective of the character. When you see the camera, I was like, well, what are they doing here? And they about sitting there asking, like, what the hell are these cameras doing here for? And it was just seeing all your superstars and wrestlers just on the downtime. I love that kind of shit. I really love that kind of stuff. They give us a quick overview of WrestleMania. They talked to Basil DeVito, the former WWE executive, says that they need to create an event where all the fans could share one single experience, and it seems simple now, but it wasn't at the time. And that's how he started days with the WrestleMania, and then Bruce Pritchard was there talking about the excitement of everybody coming together for WrestleMania. And we get to WrestleMania, 1, 2, the WrestleMania 3, which is the biggest one at that time. Then we had the two at Trump's, it was Trump Plaza in Jersey, WrestleMania 4 and WrestleMania 5. So as pay-per-view was making this killing in the 80s and the 90s, stuff like that, that they was doing $1 million buys from Mania, the next goal was to branch out. They wanted to do kind of a boxing type thing. So that's Vegas automatically. Most likely, most boxing takes place in Vegas. And Vince was interested in that and mentioned Caesars, because Caesars always done boxing. And Caesars brought in Vince to help promote the Sugar Ray Leonard fight that he had. And they talked to this guy named Rich Rose, former president of Caesars World Sports, and they had a press conference. He had a press conference with Vince, and at this time they, was promoting the fight and saying that we could probably have like a wrestling thing here. Now, usually they had what was his name? They had Colin Cowherd on there. He was just like, listen, at that time, Vegas was trying to find its identity. The identity that Vegas has now is not what it was back then. Because back then, he was like, gambling was frowned upon. And it was. Gambling was frowned upon back in the day in Vegas. And Vegas had no sports. So there was really no attraction to Vegas necessarily like that. And then they talked to Charles Wright, which at the time was Papa Shango. So it was in his hometown. So he really wanted to be there in Vegas. And then Undertaker, who's a big boxing fan, was like, listen, how MSG can be like that for us, like the Mecca, Vegas and Caesars is the Mecca for boxing. So I was, ecstatic to be there. So they talked about the floor plan that they had. Basil talked about the floor plan, and he was talking about that they wanted to hit $1 million with just over 16,000 seats. So so the top ticket price, listen to this, the top ticket price for WrestleMania 9 in 1993, I'm talking about when it comes to sitting at the front row, right there where the barricade is at, or the gate is at, you can see all the superstars, was $250. $250. Now, Grant, so I had to go look it up, right? I looked it up. I was like, so what is the equivalent? Because what there's inflation and how times change. What is the equivalent to $250? Like, how much was $250 worth in 1993 opposed to now? And I looked it up. That is the equivalent of $556 in 1993. $556. Do you know for that price alone, I could have been at WrestleMania in Vegas in the front fucking row? Because the amount of how they charge tickets today, that's thousands of dollars. Those people that sat in the front row in Vegas had to pay anywhere between $5,000 to $7,000 for them front row seats. That's insane. You got this down payment, so that's property tax money. That's stuff on your house. It was $250, and then it went to $150 to $100 to $50 and $25. You can't even get a nosebleed seat at WrestleMania for $250. No, at the top of the arena, you can't even get a nosebleed seat for $250 today. It just blew my mind. And once again, I know times have changed, but I was like, man, that's what we was. Oh my God, just the difference, just the difference. And he said even in those days they were thriving to have the $25. They wanted to keep that on there because as the starting goal. So they said that around December of '92. 8 days, he said they just sold around 2,000 tickets. And it's like, not bad, but sales slow after the first weekend. And then, so they were getting nervous. And they was like, well, maybe we need to get to, go back to one of our biggest stars. Because the WrestleMania 9 main event was Bret Hart, who was a champion at the time. Because once again, we were going to the new generation. 92. I think was the official start of the new generation. And they were going with Bret Hart and Yokozuna won the Royal Rumble in January. So those were the two that was going into the main event. They were a little nervous about going to the main event because they never had that spot before. But it's the new generation. But since tickets weren't selling, they had to go back to the well and they went back to Hulk Hogan. Now, the reason is Hulk Hogan and Vince had honestly fallen out after WrestleMania 8 because they talked about that was supposed to be the unofficial retirement of Hulk Hogan. That's why he was in the main event against Sid Justice, and which the main event should have been Macho Man Ric Flair, but we're not even going to get into that. But however, he took a year off, and he was actually going out there and doing movies and Suburban Commando and Mr. Nanny and all that stuff like that. He was out there doing those kind of movies, but in real hindsight, they had the little falling out because of the whole steroid thing, and it was a bad look. So Hogan needed to leave. So Hogan was gone, but now they had to go back and call Hogan back to do this. And you can tell that the guys, they was just like, well, listen, we're in the new generation area now. You about to call back the old guys. And it was, what's funny? You know what the irony of that is? To hear Undertaker talk like that, the old guy came back. Now they went into Royal Rumble, and in Royal Rumble they introduced two new stars. This is when they introduced Lex Luger as Narcissus, as the original name. And then it's like, what? Ew. Because I was like, I don't even know that name. And then they start calling him the Narcissus, Lex Luger. But Bobby Heenan was having a problem saying the name. And it was just like, this is like a bad name. But they showed all the characters as they wanted. And this is when he was coming out with the mirrors. This is before we got the all-American Lex Luger, trying to take Hogan's place. This is when he was coming out with the mirrors and all that stuff like that. But he had a good look to it, though. And they also debuted Giant Gonzalez. Giant Gonzalez. Sam Ross was on there. He was like, listen, it looks stupid, but 9-year-old me was terrified of Giant Gonzalez. And he had, his head was massive. So he had, an intimidating thing, but it was the bodysuit. Because Undertaker was interviewing him. He was like, nobody can take that man seriously with the bodysuit and the fur that was coming over there. It just looked so damn stupid. And the airbrush abs and all that stuff like that. And yeah, he didn't have that fear factor when I say fear factor, I mean that intimidating factor like Great Khali did when he first debuted. Great Khali sucked. But when he first came, he was already jacked, he was huge, and he he had that chiseled chin. He had that long hair was intimidating. Giant Gonzalez had a massive head and had, it was starishly huge. But that bodysuit did not work. Okay. And then when they went to the Rumble match, there was talks well, Yokozuna winning going against Bret Hart, they're both unproven in that spot. And there was some talk about maybe put Macho Man to win the Rumble. Because I think this is the Rumble where Macho Man tried to go for a pinfall and got tossed over the ring. I think this was the Rumble that happened. That was so fucking stupid. So, it was like, well, maybe if you have Macho Man win it, he can put over Bret Hart in the new guard. He can do that. He can win and put over Bret Hart at WrestleMania. And to be honest with you, a Macho Man versus Bret Hart match does sound pretty good. I wouldn't have mind that matchup, to be honest with you. But this is when they kept Macho Man like sitting at commentary. I was like, Macho Man is better than just being at commentary, to be honest with you. Like, he can go in there and work. He can still work. But Vince wanted to have him at commentary. I guess he represented the old guard, right? So they show like they had the WrestleMania press conference, and then Macho Man brings out Bret Hart, and Bret Hart talks. And Bret Hart already said that he knew he was nervous and he wanted to hit it out the park. And it was also hard, sitting there carrying and being, the champion. So even at the Royal Rumble, they had the guy playing Julius Caesar and Cleopatra coming out to let everybody know, come to WrestleMania. But WrestleMania, it still wasn't selling. It still was not doing as great. And people were just not buying WrestleMania. So they knew that they had to rely on Hulk Hogan. Vince had to make the call. And he was like, people had husbands and wives and things like that, and you got to make this money. And then so Basil was just like, listen, I personally have 2 kids that went to college because of Hulk Hogan. And it was like, listen, I don't like Hogan. I'm not even going to sit here and sugarcoat that, but I do understand the drawing power that, especially at that time, that Hulk Hogan has. And at that time, this is even before we even knew all the bullshit. So I get it. I do get it. And at that time, if I was like a teenager at that time, or even a young kid, especially a young kid at that time, I would probably most likely be a Hogan fan too. That's just how it was at that time. Now, at this time, Hogan did not like the process of acting and sitting around and shooting. He wanted to get back into the ring, and he said it wouldn't have took much to offer. If he had offered me, it wouldn't take much to get back in the ring. And Vince kind of knew that, and he was kind of hesitant at first because it would have gave Hogan some leeway, but he had to make the call. So they had Hogan return on Raw. It's just kind of weird seeing Hogan on them early Raws, because you don't associate that Hogan with Raw. You just never did in the 90s. But he was there. He was there to team up with his best friend, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and their match that they had built towards was Hogan and Beefcake taking on Money Incorporated, which was Ted DiBiase and IRS. And this is also after Brutus Beefcake's horrible accident. I didn't do the Dark Side of the Ring episode review. I did see the episode when he had that terrible accident that really messed up his face. But that's the match that they was built to. It was a tag team match. Lex said that Hogan was by far the biggest name ever in wrestling, but there was a question mark, for the boys back there. Even Undertaker, like I said, was talking about how you bring somebody in for the past, even though he did the same shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was built up once a year for WrestleMania for Undertaker, and when he had a bad match, he wanted to come and make it up. Remember WrestleMania 33 going into WrestleMania 34? So yeah, like, these things happen. So, but the irony, but Taker's like, we still had to, sell tickets, and Hogan right now is the name that helps sell the tickets, because right now you got these two, the young stars, they still gotta, I guess, prove themselves. So they show backstage footage of them building the stadium that they were going to do, and how they wanted to make it, like the Roman Coliseum, and how they wanted to have that kind of feel to it and have a theme to it, and it was going to be like the biggest toga party ever, I believe it was said. They even talked about that there was a member of the team called Dollar Bill, that every time you ask them a question, it would end up costing them more money and stuff like that. So it was good seeing them prepare and build this arena, having the whole Roman look. They even had Howard Finkel in there, dressed up as, in the toga and everything. And I forgot who it was, but they said, "Hey Howard, pizza." If you know. If you guys remember Little Caesars, that was like the mascot for Little Caesars back in the day. And the way Little Caesars is now was not how Little Caesars was. That Little Caesars was like, they used to have some of the oily cheese and stuff like that. But you had to go call Little Caesars. It was kind of like Domino's, and they would deliver the stuff to your house, stuff like that. It ain't like that no more. You just go to Little Caesars and just get little quick ass pizza. It wasn't like that back in the 90s. It wasn't. Now, they was also concerned about what would the weather be like. How, will it be too windy? Will it rain? Will it not? They was in there saying they was going over the Farmer's Almanac and everything to make sure that it was going to be good. Because it's their first outdoor arena. Even Vince was backstage telling Shawn Michaels, like, listen, when they, cheer, you got to get the crowd, like, into it, because all the sounds will go up to the heavens. There's no dome to capture the sound to give it, that really loud thing you're looking for. So you got to be prepared for that. So at this time, we're just really just looking at all the people talking about it, showing each other, like everybody having fun. Macho Man making fun of Linda for drinking Pepsi on the rocks, yeah. And then Bret Hart like, well, where are the girls at? Yeah, hey, we know Bret Hart want to know where the women at. You know what I'm saying? Where the women? And so they sit there laughing. They was even show Shawn Michaels, and he had like a little crotch shot. He's like, who took that shot? Like him out there, just on a robe and everything like that. I really got right up in the crotch and stuff like that. Bam Bigelow playing with an elephant out there. So it was so good, like seeing all this kind of footage. And this is the kind of stuff that I like. So, but one thing I like also is, if anybody has seen, because y'all know how big of a Mike fan I am, if anybody ever seen the documentary of Bad 25 or Off the Wall Journey, or Becoming a Legend, whatever it calls, Journey from Motown to Off the Wall, those two Mike Jackson documentaries, what Spike Lee does in the documentaries is he does give the backstory of what's going on, and then when we get to the album, he talks about each song in detail of where it came from. The reason why I bring that up is because that's how it was here with the match. They talked about each match on the WrestleMania card. And I was just like, I like that. I like that format. Opposed to saying, it was one of these kind of shows that it wasn't the best show, but we still had... No, they talked about each match on the card, and you got some different stories about it. So that's the one thing I really loved about this documentary. They start going through the entrances. Taker's is showing the rehearsal. Taker's entrance school. He's out there with sunglasses. He has his vulture on his corner. Taker was worried about the vulture because the vulture was acting up. And he's like, it's unpredictable when you have animals. And they had all kinds they had elephants, they had ostriches, they had vultures, they had so many animals. It was unpredicted. And Undertaker was like, well, I worry about if this thing's going to shit on me. And I was like, I don't know how it's going to be alive. So he was really paranoid for it. And you can see he was just like uncomfortable with it. Then they was going to Luger's entrances, and the ladies were going to have the mirrors, and on the mirrors, the fireworks are going to come out on top of the mirrors, which is actually a pretty cool visual. But when he said with the wind, they was thinking it could be some problems because the fireworks was going just blowing, the wind was just blowing the fireworks onto the girls. It was like, whoa, and anybody got hit with like a firework, it's kind of hot. All right, everybody can't be Goldberg and just, immune that thing. And they even had plans of thinking about carrying Yokozuna out to the ring. That big son bitch, you think about trying to carry him out to the ring with only 4 guys? No. No. It was like, you know what? No, he's just way too big. We're not even going to do that. Which once again is funny that they said that, because if you go 2 years in the future, they carried Mabel in 1995 to the ring when he was a king. And I was just like, Mabel was a big son of a bitch. So it's like, why you do that? So then WrestleMania Sunday comes up, but nobody can find Hogan. Where is Hogan? And they have Hogan finally walking in to the facility. He had sunglasses on. And he got the sunglasses wrapped around, and he had some stitches. And then Undertaker was like, well, it looked like somebody not hit him, so he should have bowed instead of weaved. And then it was a pretty nasty looking black guy, and it was. And then even Brett was like, oh, somebody got Hogan good in the eye, right? And IRS Mike Rotunda says he didn't give it to him. And Taker says it didn't take long for the rumors to go around that said it was Savage. Even Scott Steiner said that he wasn't there, so he doesn't know. But he rolled around with Macho. He told him what happened, and he knows that Macho Man wasn't happy about it. But shit happens, and it actually showed this. They actually showed what Steiner said to Hogan. Hogan was like, well, that's what he wasn't believing it, but this is what happened. Now, before I get into what the fuck Hogan said, right? Because everything out Hogan's mouth be like a lie. So before I even get into that, I gotta tell you what the reason why Randy Savage could have punched him. So at the time, back in those days, Macho Man was married to Miss Elizabeth, but he was a very paranoid guy. I've seen this on other documentaries. I've read this in books that he's very, very paranoid guy. Like to the point where when he was at shows, he would lock Miss Elizabeth in his dressing room until he got back. And, it was very controlling. So she wanted to get out of there. And she said somebody said that she would file for divorce. And when there was a I forgot when this was, that she was friends with Hogan's wife at the time. And she went down there in Florida to hide from Macho. And so Macho Man went go looking for her. And I think when he got down there, he see Hogan answer the door. All of a sudden, being paranoid, Macho Man, probably thinking that he was having an affair with Elizabeth. He got in his head about having her break up. So that was one of the rumors that it could have went for Macho Man to go haul off and knock Hogan the fuck out. And here's the thing: I have no proof of that. Nobody has no proof of that. The only person who knows what really happened is Hogan and a couple other people. That happened. And in my personal opinion, I think Macho did it. I think he hit him. I understand that he had to congratulate him after the show, stuff like that. I just think, you could be professional about it, but I think, he went off and hit him and probably assumed that Hogan was having an affair with Miss Elizabeth and went off and did that and called it and just like, all right, well, my bad. That Hogan probably didn't want to tell Vince because it probably would have fired Macho Man, because once again, that is their golden goose and they need to sell tickets for it. If he had injured him like that, then he would have got fired. Hell, shit, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, like, you don't hit Hogan. You know what I'm saying? But at that time, for business, you don't do that. So I can see Hogan trying to protect him in that way. But I think Macho often hit him because the story that Hogan told about how he got this black guy is more completely ludicrous than just saying that Macho Man went off and hit you. And the thing was that he said he was on a jet ski. They was out jet skiing, right? And while he was in Florida riding on a jet ski, he hit the wrong button that put the nose of the jet ski down to the water, and he flew over the top. And as he flew over the top, his life jacket, he flew over the top, and then he fell into the water. It's like he went over into the water, and then so did the jet ski. But he was trying to cover himself up, but then he couldn't, and the jet ski came back down, and part of the jet ski caught him right in his eye, and he was laid out unconscious in the water. Okay? And then he was floating in the water, and then when they brought him out and came to, and Jimmy Hart was there, he says, I wasn't missing WrestleMania, because, he from the old school and you make your dates. What? I'd rather you had just said you got in a fight with your wife or something like that, and she hit you. You can't fire her. Bruh, if a jet ski flipped Hogan over, as big as a man Hogan is, if they flipped Hogan over, and then it flipped up, I'm not saying it came down 50 feet, because that would have killed him. Even if it just flipped up immediately and just like flipped over, it's still coming down on his eye, his left eye, right there, the eye socket behind that. There's a brain somewhere that he doesn't use, and it hits him right there on the left side of his or temple. He would be dead. At worst, seized out. He would be dead. And if he did die from the initial impact of the jet ski, actually he could have had a seizure and drowned. Come on, Hogan. Hogan, see, this the shit I'm talking about. Hogan be on that thing like it's something else. So, let's just when we get to the event, they had 2 long lines of, and to the point where I think Basil and he said him and Little Man was out there taking tickets to get into WrestleMania, because once again they didn't have a proper, so they built this stadium, and they only had 2 lines open, and it wasn't getting people through in time to get these tickets, so they had to help out to get people into the show, because the show's about to start. It's like 8:00, right? They had a dark match, or with or the pre-show, but the dark match was Tito Santana taking on Papa Shango. Papa Shango was happy because it was in Vegas, his hometown, and he said that he only had one job, and it make him look good, and then they had a decent enough match, and then he said he didn't care if it was a dark match. He just was there that he was in Vegas and got to perform in front of his whole crowd, in front of his people. They started bringing all the people out, like Jim Ross came out, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Macho Man. They was getting all weird out to the ring, Vince McMahon, all stuff like that. That's how he introducing WrestleMania. And then Basil was saying they even when the event started in the crowd, he was doing crowd control because the VIP there was a VIP from Germany who was throwing a fit because none of his people were in the arena yet, and wanted everything. Listen, everything to start over because his VIPs wasn't there yet. And then Reigns tells him he said, well, he'll work on it. He just says, I just disappeared because the show already started. We will sit there and like, hey, well, all the other 16,000 people that's here, your VIPs ain't here, or they still trying to get in. Like, let's just stop everything and start the show over. Like, the audacity in some of these people sometimes, the audacity to even do shit like that. Shawn Michaels had his first match, and he was taking on Tatanka. And for the was it for the Intercontinental Championship? I can't remember. But no, he was taking on Tatanka. And then they had a pretty good match. Like, honestly, if you had to choose which was the match of the night for WrestleMania 9, it will probably be Shawn and Tatanka, to be honest with you. They said Razor Ramon and Bob Backlund. They didn't really do it. It really wasn't that great, but Razor Ramon took on Bob Backlund. Then we had the Steins vs. the Head Shrinkers. Just played that match in 2K25, and it was a pretty good one. It was a pretty damn good matchup. First of all, we didn't talk about that impressive as they had Rick Steiner up in like the Doomsday Device, and as I don't know if it was Fatu, aka Rikishi, was coming off or the other one. He comes off and Steiner catches him and power slams him onto the mat. Like, the times were really impressive. There was one thing that Scott got away with. He almost decapitated himself on a stun gun, and then they pulled the rope down. He kind of fell to the outside of the ring, but they didn't talk about that part. But they did talk about how good that match was. Then they had Crush versus Doink. This was Evil Doink era, and Sam Ross talks about how much great that he enjoyed the violence angle of Doink the Clown, how it got to that point, and we had the Evil Clown thing. So this is when we get like the double Doink finish, and they did do the little mirror thing with Doink the Clown. And Chris, I was like, okay, yeah, that was cool. Then we get to main event 1, I think it is, right? Because it's a double main event because Hogan not going, if he's not going to open, and he's going to be the main event show. So it was Hogan and Brutus Beefcake taking on Money Inc. And so now Vince didn't see the black eye, and then he was like, "You're not wrestling tonight." And Hogan said, "I ain't wrestling tonight." He said, "You're not wrestling tonight," but you said you got to get. He said, "If I get cleared by the doctor, I can wrestle." So he goes to the doctor. He tells the doctor, "Hey, look, we got an angle going where Macho Man punched me and got the black guy, got some stitches going on to it." And he said, "But look, it's like a wrestling angle, so don't tell nobody." So the doctor signs off for him to go, and he tells Vince, he shows like, "My doctor's no Vince. He got to go off one," so then he wants off to have it. And I'm just like, there's no proof of it, but it gets me further to think that, you know what, hey, Macho Man hit him. It's a wonky finish that Jimmy Hart turns his coat inside out, becomes like the referee, and pins Money Incorporated. Hogan and PK pins Money Incorporated, but then the referee comes back and they say no, they've been DQ'd, and so Money Incorporated get the win. The fans boo, but DiBiase lifts his briefcase and there is full of money, and they sit there and they're throwing out all this money into the audience. It's like real money, ones, fives, tens, $100 bills, and even one of the super fans. I forgot, not the Vladimir one. The other super fan that be with Vladimir, he said he got him some $5 bill. There were hundreds stuff like that, and the briefcase was like people were just trying to reach over and just grab the money out of me. But see, that's the great thing of having them kind of seats right there. They would never do that today. But still, and having that and throwing all the money, that was great. So even though they did that as main event 1, it still was like in the middle of the card, because after that we had Luger versus Mr. Perfect. Now he said that Luger was like, "Listen, I got the greatest dance partner in the world. I got Mr. Perfect, one of the greatest athletes that has ever graced the wrestling ring, right?" And he goes out there and then he does the thing in the mirror. He tells the woman to put the mirrors up a little bit more, and then the fireworks go. But once again, the wind is blowing and the power is just blowing into the face of the women holding the mirrors. I felt sorry for them ladies. I did. But he was nervous, but he said Perfect was great. But then when he got into the ring, he said he was over caffeinated or something else. Look, drugs, right? And Perfect is sitting there butchering the narcissist name backstage, and he's all fumbling all over his words. And then Luke was like, "Okay, is he ripping me?" But then he puts him in the headlock, and he says like, "Listen, okay, so what we doing?" And Luke was like, "Wait a minute, so now I got to work this match. I gotta lead this matchup." And so it was, for funny hearing that kind of thing like that. But then after that, it was real catching that Shawn and Mr. Perfect had like a fight with Luger. Well, Perfect went back there with Luger, started taking Luger. Then Shawn got involved. They had like a backstage brawl, backstage also. Next match we had Undertaker and Giant Gonzalez. The less said about this, the better, because this was the first time Undertaker won a match by DQ. He didn't beat Giant Gonzalez. Gonzalez got DQ. Can you imagine how the streak may have never been a thing if Undertaker just lost his matchup, but it was by DQ? How it would have changed history. So he said, Undertaker said that match gave me the chills, and not for a good reason. So they Undertaker, I think after they took him to the back, he came back out to take down Gonzalez, something like that. But it was a nothing match, and they did the same thing again at SummerSlam, and it was just worse. And Giant Gonzalez was out of there. Then they had the main event 2, which is Bret Hart taking on Yokozuna. And now Bret Hart sits here and he's saying that he wanted to have a good match, but Yoko was getting tired, and then they had to cut the match early. Now I've heard him say this before, but I also heard that they had a hard cutoff time also, and Vince instructed the ref that we gotta cut this match. So I don't know if Bret knows that or not, or if he just blames Yokozuna for this, being tired, and then also that he wanted to do they couldn't do in the match. And he said he put the sharpshooter on him, and Mr. Fuji wasn't even ready because we wasn't at that part of the match yet, and he was just like, you got to throw the salt in my eye. So Fuji had to get out as he was sitting there holding Yokozuna in the sharpshooter, which was a lot because Yokozuna got the big ass legs. So he throws the salt in there, and then Yokozuna pins Bret Hart and wins the championship. So then Hogan comes out and tries to tell the referee, like, no, he cheated, brother. And he threw the salt in there, so you got to get rid of him. So then Mr. Fuji has the idea that Yokozuna challenges Hulk Hogan to a match. Like, what the champion who just won the match, who was not the champion coming in because he won the Royal Rumble, wins the championship, and then has his manager challenge Hulk Hogan to a match after he just had a wrestling, a fight for the championship. Make it make sense. It doesn't. It doesn't. So then what happens? He gets into the ring. Yokozuna holds Hogan for the salt. Mr. Fuji goes in there. Hogan gets out the way. Hits and then clotheslines him down. They even get the big boot. Clotheslines him down. And then hits the leg drop. And 1, 2, 3. Hogan wins the championship. And it was... Oh my God, I would be frustrated. Right. Well, once again, the crowd popped for it, and when he was interviewing crowd members, like, what's your favorite part of WrestleMania? Hogan, even Vladimir was like, yeah, that was the best match of Mania because they was Hogan fans. And it's like what we know now about Hogan and stuff like that is you look at him differently, but back then Hogan was the motherfucking man. And just having Hogan come in there and win a championship that quick like that, even though he was going to drop it to Yokozuna at the next pay-per-view at King of the Ring, that is right there what Hogan was about. So, but overall, they said that the thing was a success, of what they were trying to accomplish, and they felt good about it. Is Mania 9 still, like, in my personal opinion, the worst WrestleMania of all time? No, it's not, because after seeing this documentary, it really helped me give me a better insight of it. Because right now, I'm thinking, like, in my head, if I'm going back to WrestleMania, it's 27. I really hated 27. 27 was a one-match card. I really did not like 27. So, there's that one that comes to mind. WrestleMania 2 comes to mind. It's like, like really bad ones. But WrestleMania 9 can't go down as the worst anymore like it used to. If you had actually this 10 years ago, I'd have been like, WrestleMania 9, without a doubt, is the worst WrestleMania of all time. So, I probably would have said that. So, but... overall, I think it was a great documentary. You got to go and check out the documentary. It's very insightful. I know I'm probably forgetting some parts, but I was just, just doing this part. I really wanted to talk about it. I appreciate y'all guys listening to me about it, but we're going to go on because we got to talk about the other things that happened on WrestleMania weekend as well.